Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We're on episode 130. And Justin, I want to say, because we always start with the weather, I want to say that the weather's great, but I'm going to jinx it because it's taking an unfortunate turn for the worse the next 2 days, it looks like, according to the forecast.
Yeah, but I'm gonna take it as a win because the whole week has been so nice.
Yeah, true. Beggars can't be choosers for sure.
Right.
This is the time where it's always interesting at the gym because you go through like periods, like it's kind of like periodized where some people flock to the gym during New Year's because that's where everybody hits the gym. And this is the time where it kind of like there's a mass exodus because obviously initially like March, April, you have the New Year's resolutioners drop off. But once summer hits, it seems like there's a lot less people in the gym. Um,
Right.
so, and maybe part of that's like students that are spread throughout certain times versus being relegated to a specific time period. But the gyms kind of empty out because people are really starting to be more active
More.
outside and not even just
Right.
active in the sense of like exercise, but they're also outside for the purpose of getting stuff done that they put off or not necessarily put off, but haven't been able to do for several months at a time here in Ohio.
Right. Right. For sure. I think that's one of the reasons why I like the idea of a gym with garage doors.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be awesome if you could open up all the doors like on the sides and the front and it be inside. So you're out of the elements, your equipment's not going to get trashed, but still have that natural breeze, that natural outside heat, just all around the natural feel of being outside, but you're still inside. So I think if a gym did that, they would have more people through this time of the year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that anytime, I mean, everybody knows our stance at this juncture where getting outside and doing work outside is our favorite, just in terms of like anything we can do outside is beneficial for mental health and ultimately physical health too, because,
Right.
you have a lot of like science that supports being in the sun and being outside and being grounded and all that stuff. But I think summertime, actually, even more so than winter, seems to be for I know it's not publicized as much because like the New Year's resolution thing is like very vocal and people post about it and it's something that's like often promoted. But I feel like a lot of people, maybe even most people, tend to start fitness journeys in the summertime.
I agree. I can't tell you how many people I've heard talk about over the years. You know, as soon as the weather breaks, I'm going to start this or I'm going to start that. And I think you're on. I think you're right. It's more when the weather's nice, people want to look nice, people want to feel better.
And I want to
It's
I kind of want to like assume that a lot of that's predicated on necessity. So like a lot of people in the wintertime, you don't need to look good in a sense because people aren't really concerned with their body or as concerned with their body image during the winter months because you're wearing coats and sweatshirts and sweaters and hoodies and jackets and everything. So to a large degree, people are covered up. Well, then in the
right.
summertime, especially in a state that vibrantly sees all four seasons, you think that those people are a little bit more probably self-conscious in a sense to where they want to make sure that they're, a little bit slimmed down or losing weight or looking good when their long pants have to come off and the long sleeve have to come off, or and some people even to get to like that bikini season or bathing suit season, there's like that little bit of self-doubt or self-conscious mentality that kind of overtakes you and you need to start back in the gym or start in the gym in the first place for a lot of people.
I agree. And honestly, I could say that, I know that to be a lot of fact for me over the years is I'm back in the old days, I would always say when the weather breaks, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to start working out, or I'm going to start eating right. And just always waiting for that season to change.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that for a lot of people, um, there's also the fact that they have more time in the summer. I mean, that's obviously coming from the stance of someone who's a teacher, but it just seems that people, I don't know if they have more time, but they allocate more time to themselves during the summer, like with vacations and such. So I don't know. It just seems to
Well,
be like a good opportunity for people to start fitness journeys. And maybe that can even be like a talking point for us today is especially for people that come from nowhere or in terms of like exercising, like how does someone start or go about starting a training program? or an exercise routine or whatever? Like, where is the starting point just in terms of exercise? Because you and I have dialogued a lot publicly about, how to get started with nutrition, how to get started with this, that. What about someone who literally just wants to exercise? And, because I know we harp on the nutrition, we harp on stress management and time management and all the things that go into a good, healthy lifestyle. But really, the foundation of a healthy lifestyle has to be exercise and activity first and foremost. So what do you think,
Well,
like, speaking from your perspective, what do you think are some of the key components to for someone who wants to start a training regimen this summer or an exercise program?
I guess that's kind of levels, right? It depends on what their level is, like, so there's a lot of people that, don't do like activity, don't do exercise, don't, run or swim or bike or any of that, but they're still in relatively good shape, cardiovascular and physical shape. So I guess if you're talking about somebody who was like where I was, where maybe not even so far to where I was, but somebody who is, has extra weight to lose and doesn't have much activity,
Mhm.
literally just going for a walk. Like, just make it a point to enjoy these extra hours of daylight that we have. And instead of turning the TV on when you get home, go inside, change into your outside clothes, shorts and a t-shirt even, or just, tennis shoes, get out of them work boots and get some tennis shoes on and go for a walk.
Yep.
To me, I think, and I've been told this by, several people over the last couple of years since I've hit this long kind of pause, right? Where I'm not making much progress. And I'm not going backwards anymore, but I'm not going forward so much. Is the most progress I've ever made was when the majority of my exercise routine was cardio, just going
Yeah.
for a walk.
I think
So
that
I think
walking is the most underrated form of exercise, period. No questions asked.
I agree 100%. I can remember when I first started, my first form of exercise was parking at the end of the parking lot at Walmart before I went grocery shopping.
Sure.
That was the base. That was the baseline, is walk farther to get my groceries. So I think that is the best place for everybody to start. But, if we're talking about that other group of people where they're not terribly out of shape, they're not terribly overweight, they don't eat terrible, but they just don't do anything, and that's a lot of people, right? I think contacting somebody like you for what do you call general population programming,
Mhm.
where they work with you, work with a coach, somebody like you that can steer them in the right direction to not overwhelm them, but give them a baseline of things to do, because it is hard to walk into a gym and not know anything and get something effective done.
Yes.
So not to sell, not to be, not for this to be a sales pitch, but I mean, in my opinion, you're the best in the valley. So if you're in our area, I think that as somebody new should be looking you up to get rolling, get the ball rolling at least. Like,
Well,
I
I
mean,
do
because that's
appreciate the free lunch there. That's definitely welcome. For sure. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think that one thing too that I see in terms of people starting a program, and when you talk about levels, like you kind of geared the question certainly towards people that are starting period that have never done anything before, like get walking, something very basic and simple. I think that we can take this question and hopefully give every listener some value, no matter what type of level you're at. One of the mistakes that I see with exercise programming is people being too focused on their specific goal. So by that, and I know that that sounds very, very counterintuitive to what you would expect me to say, right? Like, what do you mean too
Yeah.
focused on our goal? Well, I think
If
that
you
people,
wanted to use, sorry,
no, go ahead, go ahead.
if you wanted to use an example of somebody, you could talk about the several times I've done what you're going to talk about.
So I think that a lot of times people get so hyper focused on a goal that they lose sight of all other aspects of nutrition and exercise and all the other programming items that go into it. So, for example, if someone wants to lose fat, sometimes they get so obsessive with the things that they deem as fat loss tools. So like cardio, any type of cardio, we'll just leave it at that. But what people tend to realize is all types of exercise and performance indicators are going to have carryover to others. So, like lifting weights is highly metabolic and is more beneficial, and studies have shown this, more beneficial to fat loss than cardio is. Now, obviously, something that would be the most beneficial would be some type of conjunction with each other, like the two of them combined, cardio and strength training. But sometimes people get so hyper focused on fat loss that all they do is cardio, and they don't really, some people don't know any better. Some people are just too myopically, inclined to doing one thing and that's it. But then same thing with the opposite. I know people that want to get big and strong. They want to add muscle. They want to add strength. And they feel that for some reason that cardio is going to like devoid them of any progress. And they're not going to be able to make strength gains or muscle gains if they're doing cardio. And from someone who can not only back this up with physiology and science, but also from anecdotal experience with myself and dozens of clients, is that the person who makes the most strength gain and muscle gain is someone that also implements cardio strategically. So I feel
Right.
like some people are so afraid, or not necessarily afraid, but they're so focused on doing one type of training that they don't understand how much overlap. Like people say, oh, well, I just want to get big and strong. I don't care about losing fat. Or I just want to lose as much possible. Or lose as much fat as possible. I don't care how much muscle I have. But really, all those like types of exercises, whether it's lifting or cardio or low intensity cardio, just like walking or yoga or whatever, there's so much carryover between those different modalities, those different tools of exercise, that the person who's going to benefit the most are the ones that are doing the most, I would think. Now, obviously, okay, using the example of getting big and strong and adding muscle tissue, just lean tissue, I don't think you're going to have an even split of all those tools. So you're not going to do 50% yoga, 50% lifting. But I think that yoga certainly has a place in any strength development program because our bodies are limited by our weakest link. So in terms of strength training, if you're doing only strength training and you don't have cardiovascular capacity, I've noticed that on higher rep sets of squats or deadlifts or even bench, for example, like I'll actually get out of breath and my lungs will tire out at times before I hit like mechanical failure or metabolic failure from a tissue perspective.
Right.
So
I
I
agree
think
with
that
that
one of the
100%.
things I hear all the time that's really, really like opened my eyes, and I agree with this wholeheartedly and kind of send this message out to others now myself, is the thing that you should be doing is the thing that you're not doing.
Right.
You could take that macro wise, like in the sense of like the big picture, like, oh, you're not doing any cardio. That's probably the missing piece that you should be doing. Oh, you're a distance runner, but you're not doing any strength training and you're getting hurt all the time. Well, there's your missing component. You need to be lifting weights. Or you could take it on the micro level and look really, really small nuance within the programming that you're already doing. So if you're doing all sets of 3 to 5 or doubles or singles like a power lifter, maybe you need to work into a hypertrophy rep range, like an 8 to 12 rep range or a 15 to 20 rep range, because that's going to benefit you and give you an alternate stimulus that your body's not used to, and your body will grow and adapt from it. So I think that's kind of like an analogy for life. Not that I want to get off exercise, but we need to be doing the things that we aren't doing. And a lot of times, myself included, the reason we aren't doing things is because of not wanting to get uncomfortable within that certain thing.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
I agree. And the whole uncomfortable thing is, to me, it's like hyperly important, but I don't know when to introduce it to somebody new. Right. Because when we're talking about somebody coming into this world new, like off the street, never done it before.
Yeah.
If you tell them every time they start to get comfortable with what they do, you tell them they need to do something different because they're too comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they might get, what's the word I'm looking for? They might get like not scared, but like gun shy almost, because they don't ever know. There's no comfort. Like, ironically enough, there's nothing to be comfortable with when they're in that gym setting or in whatever that setting is. Because like, I know for me, example, like when I first started, I did the same thing every day for 20 weeks.
Yeah.
Every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but it was a lot. And it was the exact same routine. I did the exact same exercises, exact same rep ranges, just increase weight when necessary for like 20 weeks. And that's when I started to want to become uncomfortable. But because I got so comfortable that I understood how the movements worked. I understood how to feel different things. And I think that's a lot of stuff that people need to realize that they got to learn that. You have to give yourself time to learn what your goal is, because you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what your overall goal is the day you start.
Yeah.
Because it's going to change, and that's okay. But give yourself some time to learn what your goal is, and then critique and change your program along with your goal over time, because your goal might change every year. Your goal might get different, evolve into a different goal every year.
Yeah. And I think that one of the points that kind of makes me think of is when you talk about discomfort and, versus comfort. In my opinion, people need to be truly honest and self-assessing when it comes to comfort versus uncomfortable. Because an example would be like that we've brought up multiple times on the podcast is you and I both like warm temperatures. I myself personally am in a hoodie and sweatpants all the time, even if it's 90 degrees out. Now, when I train, I enjoy sweating. And for a lot of people, that's uncomfortable. And that gives the illusion of discomfort on my end. Like, oh, I like being uncomfortable. I like sweating. But to say that you like, it's kind of like a paradox to say you like being uncomfortable. Because if you like it,
right,
it's not uncomfortable.
Right.
Even from a mental standpoint. So like my coach, Austin, one of the things that he was really adamant on is that sometimes the hardest, most difficult way to push yourself is to take time off from the gym, take time off from training, take time off from drugs, take time off from extreme dieting, regardless of what end of the fitness or physique culture spectrum you're on. Sometimes taking time away and slowing down is the most difficult for people. That's true discomfort. So I think that sometimes people get caught up in what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable. And it's almost like it kind of leads me to believe that anyone who says they like being uncomfortable, whatever that scenario is, that's not really discomfort for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, I guess there's a couple cases in the world that maybe they're just psycho, but David Goggins, what he does is not, he can't be comfortable, but he enjoys doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on its own, but you're talking one out of 1,000 or more. But yeah, I got off track there. Sorry. I see what you mean. Like, it's like doing things that you enjoy doing, but saying you don't so much, or putting the illusion off that you don't so much. So you're portraying discomfort because that's what you need. If you get out of your comfort zone, you make more progress.
Yeah, I think that it's important for us to, like, every day to a degree, find something or do something that is uncomfortable that you actually don't like. Because again, to use the analogy of me wearing a hoodie and sweatpants when it's 90 degrees out, yeah, it's uncomfortable to a degree, but I like that feeling. So that's not authentic discomfort. Now, if I were to go outside when it's 5 below zero and jump in the snow and roll around for 2 minutes for some type of like cold induced thermogenesis effect, that's going to be extremely uncomfortable for me. And I don't want to do that. So feeling incredibly, incredibly hot and feeling incredibly, incredibly cold are both uncomfortable, but one of them I mentally enjoy and the other I don't. So I need to make a conscientious effort to try to get uncomfortable in scenarios that I don't like, versus, like you said, kind of brushing it off and not really pretending, but not truly undergoing an honest self-assessment of like, is this comfortable or is this not comfortable for me?
Right. And that's a really hard one. It's a really hard one to even explain how to get to the point where you can do that. Because I don't know that I truly am there. I do some things, sporadically where especially this time of year when the weather's right and we can get outside and train, doing some of the hard stuff we do outside from time to time is truly uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I enjoy it. So
Yes.
is it uncomfortable or is it just hard?
I don't know.
Because there's a difference between hard and uncomfortable, right? Like,
Yep.
if you're having fun while you're doing it, are you really out of your comfort zone? Like I can go and I haven't ran in 6 months. I can go and run a 5K today. I guarantee it. No problem. But if I made myself go and run/walk half a marathon, would I still enjoy it? Because it's going to be extremely hard. That'd be the longest, farthest thing I've ever done. And I don't know that I could finish it I don't know if I have the mental capacity to finish it. So is that would be uncomfortable probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's a whole nother area, right? Because I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's very interesting talking points for sure. So I think that takeaways from the first half of the episode would definitely be, if you're starting a training regimen, understand that overlap is okay, and that doing multiple methods of exercise are not only going to be helpful because they're going to make you more rounded, but they're actually going to help your specified area more than likely, as long as you allocate a little bit of time to those accessory things and the majority of your time to your main goal. But then also on top of that, the second thing that I think is an important takeaway from this first half of the episode would definitely be, we all know we have to get uncomfortable, but just be honest with yourself and assess what true discomfort looks like for sure.
Right. So I guess I have one thing I'd like to add to the like advice for somebody new.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to do the things you like to do. Like once you figure out what you like to do in the gym for a while, until you really like get comfortable in the environment, don't be afraid. And I know that's like a oxymoron, right? Because we're talking about being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying until you get comfortable, but like, you know what I mean? There's a whole group of people that will sit in the parking lot in their car and never go in the doors because they're afraid or they're uncomfortable with it. So once you break that barrier and you start to go, and then you find an exercise, like for me, it was tricep press downs. I loved it. And I would do it every day. That was one thing and you shouldn't do that every day. Like you shouldn't do one body part every single day. You should let your body rest. But I guess a little bit of what you shouldn't do is okay to help build that comfort in the environment. Because when you're new, you're not really able to understand what your true ceiling is. We've talked about this in the past, where on day one, your 1 rep max is maybe only 50% of your actual capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that and you can correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think you could do too much damage if you spent a few weeks doing the same things every day or 4 days a week.
Not at all.
Even if you were just training one area of the body, or you found that you like to squat and you like to bench and you like to deadlift, you're not in a couple of weeks, you're not going to learn how to use all your strength anyways. You're not going to be able to push your muscles to that fatigue point. You're going to mentally fatigue before you're physically going to be fatigued. So I don't think you would generate enough effort to cause damage rather than good. But your mental gain, in my opinion, I think would be better off if you just did the things that you like to do. So find what you like to do when you're in there and do it.
Yeah,
Make yourself comfortable with the environment.
Overtraining happens in a chronic sense, not in an acute sense.
Right.
Like, true overtraining doesn't happen in a week or in a couple of weeks. It happens over months and months and months of full-on systemic CNS blown stress. So, yeah. Well, hey, man, that actually kind of like brings up an additional talking point that I think would be nice to fit in here. So tell you what, kind of reached that point in the episode. So let's go to a quick commercial break and I'll bring that topic up when we come back.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we are back from our commercial break. All right, Justin, prior to the break, we talked a lot about programming, how to start a programming, what the benefits are to doing different things within your exercise programming. And we also talked about getting uncomfortable and being honest and self-assessing with what being uncomfortable truly means to each individual. So one of the things that it kind of made me think about is how when you structure your training, the very last thing we talked about right before we went to commercial was you talked about finding something that you enjoy doing and doing it repetitively until you find the need to do something else. So find an exercise or even a body part. I know that a lot of meatheads get like a bad rep for doing like just bench pressing and doing all curls for their arms. But I really don't think that there's anything wrong with that if it's kind of like a gateway into a more foundationally appropriate strength training program, or if it gets you into exercise at all in general. Do what you like first, ride it till the wheel falls off, and then do something second. So one of the things that made me think about is whenever you go through that type of unstructured programming, I guess I don't really know if that's a misnomer or not. Would you consider it structured or unstructured? Because it's unstructured because there's not really measurable quantitative data that goes into it. But it's almost like hyper structured because it's literally the definition of structure, where it's like support of doing the same thing on a daily basis, you know?
Right. And I guess it's kind of both too, because like if we're still talking about people that are relatively new at this point, beforehand they had no structure because they never did anything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I don't really know what you consider it, if you consider it more structure or less structure. But regardless, let's say this: whenever you transition from something simple to a more comprehensive or more thorough exercise program, how you go about using data to help in terms of like measure and tracking. So when I work with my online clients, for example, there are so many different variables that you have to consider in terms of what's appropriate for someone to log. Most of it is preference. So I have some people that prefer to log everything, every rep, every exercise, every meal, everything. I have other people that are on the complete radical end of the spectrum where they feel inconvenienced and annoyed at having to log anything, any weight, any rep, any meal, nothing. They just like having general guidelines on how to exercise, how to selectively kind of itemize their programming. They need to know what foods to eat and kind of how much to eat and about when to eat, but they can kind of eat with a little bit of intuition without measuring. They kind of need my guidance for that. And then you have everyone in between. So one of the things that kind of transitioned in my head was thinking about myself and how I've come full circle with the logbook, where when you're in training and initially early on, I never logged any data independently. So any of my lifts, I didn't keep track of them. I kind of knew in my head about where my strength was. And obviously I know if it's going to go up or down, but I personally never kept track of those lifts for a long time. Well, then I got to the point where I was like hyper focused, where every single set and every single rep in that gym, I kept in logbooks. And I did that for probably a couple years. Well, then I got to the point where I felt like that was restricting me a little bit. And I felt like I needed to have a little bit more freedom in my training, train with a little more intuition, a little bit more feel, kind of go by biofeedback versus like just being married to the logbook. So it's kind of like how the reference I can make, or the comparison that I can make, is kind of like when you talked about your goals and doing what's appropriate at the time. It's kind of the same thing. Like sometimes the logbook is really appropriate for people. Sometimes it's not appropriate for people. But I find it funny how the more and more I get into training, I kind of go back and forth on something like that, on like measuring things.
I'm the same way. And the one thing that I'm finding that I enjoy the most now and that is working the best for me now is tracking, right? Logging stuff, but only logging the compound movements. So the bench, the squat, the deadlift, basically. And
whatever the meat and potatoes of your exercise regimen is.
Right.
I think those things should be tracked and everything else becomes an accessory. So to use your example of the bench, the squat, and the deadlift, if your main goal is getting as strong as possible and you're doing 3 foundational primary movements like that, a bench, squat, and a deadlift, and you're logging those and you're continuing to make progress on those, you can be assured that all other like KPIs, as we refer to them in the strength and conditioning field, key performance indicators, if those are logged, everything else, like all your accessory work, is going up.
Right.
So like if I increase my bench press by 100 pounds, any other type of additional press, whether it's a machine press or a overhead press with a barbell or a dumbbell press, you're going to notice progress there because you had so much progress that kind of came with that foundational movement, that compound movement. Same thing with your lower body. If you add 200 pounds to your squat, I'm sure every accessory leg movement that you do is going to go up. I think that kind of adheres to like the make sure I'm making progress crowd, but it also kind of, I guess it kind of works for the people that are in the this is too annoying, I don't want to log everything crowd. It kind of appeases both sides in a sense.
Right, because it's almost a minimalistic approach.
Yeah. Minimalistic in the sense of just doing what you need to do and nothing more, nothing less.
Right. And doing all the things in between, just only keeping a sharp eye on the key movements or the key aspects.
Yeah.
So like if you're a sprinter, only keeping track of the time for your distance of a sprint, not the how much you ran in, that 50% range. Or if you're a power lifter, only keeping track of the 3 core movements. Or if you're a bodybuilder, I think you have to explain that a little better than me. But what you would have to keep track of, it's pretty much the same though. Like if you're being minimalistic, you just have to watch the body parts and track one area of them.
Yeah. Yep. And I think I like how you gave the reference of it doesn't, because usually when you think about tracking exercise, and maybe I'm just biased this way, but I feel like most people, not just myself, their mind kind of gravitates towards like lifting numbers, right? But it doesn't have to be that. It can be your mile time or your half mile time or whatever. It doesn't matter what form of exercise, even like duration. Like if you're going for a walk, if it's something that's like a very basic level, like I have an intro to exercise, I have no exercise history, I'm going to keep track of my walks. I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk. And then after next week, instead of 3 5-minute walks, I'm going to go 3 6-minute walks and then 3 10-minute walks the following week. And it's always constantly adhering for the need of adaptation.
Right.
Like if you want to slow your body to respond to a stimulus, it's going to adapt, but you need to provide an adequate stimulus in order for that to happen.
That's exactly how I started too.
Yeah.
I went for a 15-minute walk and I kept track of it. And I just built from there. And I said, okay, so 15 minutes, I went 3/4 of a mile, 0.74 actually. So I said, next week when I do this walk again, I want to go 0.75 or better.
Yep.
And I just made it. And that was my progress tracking. And then that transitioned into, I'm going to go for a 2-mile walk and I want to see how long it takes. And then I kept track. And as long as that kept getting better, I didn't make no changes because I didn't need to. It was getting better. I was making progress.
Yeah. I was talking about that with my coach. Actually would have been Thursday. Yeah. Thursday was my check-in day. And I mentioned that I've been pretty good lately about rotating out some movements where I'm kind of in this unique blend of, we have freedom, our training partners and us, where we have freedom to do whatever we want in the gym. but we still gravitate towards basic movements that vary week to week in our progressions. And I've been doing a good job of phasing some out that I feel like I'm not progressing in. And for me, I told him I usually go, and everybody's going to vary, but I usually go like 3 to 4 weeks. If I don't see progress in a particular exercise, that's after 3 to 4 weeks, that's probably enough time. And our listeners can kind of take this and use that as at least a benchmark reference for their exercises or even for their nutrition or whatever. If you don't see progress in 3 to 4 weeks, then it's time to change something, I would think.
Yeah. Ironically enough, we were talking off air a little bit ago, and that's one thing that I just said is it's been about 4 weeks and diet hasn't really changed. Exercise has decreased a smidge just because of work volume, but my outside work at home has went up drastically. And not that I'm gaining any weight, but I'm not losing a whole lot. So I think it's time to make a diet change of some sort. Mm-hmm. So, and it's ironic how alike we have became because of the amount of time that I've spent working out with you and just talking to you in general, just soaking up all that knowledge. But that's something that I do too, is like, and mine's typically 4 to 6 weeks. I'm a little bit more stubborn than you. Think I could push through it and it'll break and then I don't have to make a change, because that change is my crutch, right? That's my discomfort zone, is change.
Yes. Yep.
So I try to push it or stretch it out a little bit longer than I should sometimes, and that's where I get hung up on some progress issues at times too.
And maybe that's something that we can kind of like slowly start to wrap up the episode on, because that seems like a very, very good listener takeaway, or like an actionable step is, and I can even offer myself, as I'm sure you will as well, kind of offer ourselves as an accountability buddy in a sense, where you can kind of reach out to Justin and I if you feel like talking about what your discomfort thing is. But that could be the actionable step or the takeaway from this episode to finish up, is find something. If nothing comes to mind that you don't like doing or you're uncomfortable doing, identify it, try to figure out what it is, search for it, and do kind of an analytical step-by-step process to figure out what you want to get better at and what part of that, where's your limiting, where's the break in the chain, so to speak. So if I want to be more lean and I want to have a good physique, where's the break in the chain? Am I not working out enough or hard enough? Am I not sleeping enough? Am I not eating the correct food? Am I like not sticking to the diet? Am I not taking the right supplementation? Do I not have the best stress management? So if you're not where you want to be in a specific like paradigm, look at that paradigm chain and figure out where the break is. Because I guarantee that wherever the break is, the reason there's a break there is because that's the comfort or the discomfort avoidance level for you. That's where your missing link is for sure.
Right.
All right, man.
I agree with that.
I think that's a really good place to end her. And, after offering up that, I guess even a listener challenge, so to speak, of trying to identify things that really make you uncomfortable and then being vulnerable enough to share that with people.
And that's the key is, true discomfort is putting yourself in a vulnerable situation.
100%. Couldn't agree more, man. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. As always, we appreciate your listenership and we look forward to hearing back from you guys next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and take it all. I'm born to be untamable, go right to the edge and